Today's interview is with the author of Meet 100 People, Pat Headley. And as you can imagine, when someone wrote a book like that, we focus a lot on building relationship and networking and why that's so important. So she gives a lot of great tips on how to do that and how to be effective at that. So I think we all could be better at networking and all could be better at building relationships. And this business is built on that. So this is a great interview and you should stick around for all of that. Hello and welcome to Wrestling with Real Estate, where we look to chokeslam all your real estate problems. I'm your host, former WWE wrestler and now Cirque du Soleil performer, and of course, multifamily real estate investor, Barry Griffiths. Now today we're joined by Pat Headley. Hey, Pat.
Hey, Barry, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic, thank you. How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. Excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. And we had a great conversation beforehand, covering all kinds of stuff. So this is going to be a great interview today, no doubt about that. But before we kind of jump in, do you want to kind of introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. So I'm an investor and an advisor and an author. I wrote a book called Meet 100 People, which encourages all of us to build relationships. I advise a number of companies in the real estate space. I've invested in real estate and I have 3 adult children, 2 sons who are both active in real estate.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, we were talking about before. Maybe, hopefully, we'll try and persuade your son to come on the show as well because he's been pretty successful. That'll be a fun interview as well. How did you first get involved with real estate? Because I'm always interested by that. Right, there's always something that kind of pushes someone towards or attracts them towards the real estate world. Was there something in particular that took you that direction?
I think the roots of it really are with my family. When I was growing up, my parents were immigrants. They purchased their first home and then they looked to make some purchases of investment property. They made a couple of investments like that. And since I was young and I was curious and interested, they kind of involved me in the process. Fast forward to after I completed schooling, purchased our own home, purchased a vacation home, and very interested and curious about all the changes that are happening in real estate because I find that there's a ton of opportunity, especially in this environment and going forward.
Yeah. Very, very cool, very cool. Because I'm always interested how people get involved because not everyone does, and there's usually something that kind of pushes. And it's cool that your parents' influence kind of took you that direction. So that's cool. What did you start investing first? Did you start advising first? Which one came first?
Well, for my career, I was an investor. So I worked for a global growth investment firm for nearly 30 years. And that's what really exposed me to what it is to be an investor. And while there, I was focused on a number of different companies, mostly companies driven by technology, interestingly enough. So not a lot of real estate at that point in time. And it was after my time with this firm, when I started to invest in companies privately and individually, that I happened to meet companies that were in the real estate space. And so I became active and have been an advisor to a couple of them and currently an investor in one and an advisor to another.
Okay, and then when you say you're an investor, is that as a limited partner or as one of the partners of the investment? And what do they invest in real
Sure.
estate?
Well, these are investments in companies themselves that are real estate focused. So these are equity investments in those companies as opposed to a limited partner.
Okay, and then what does that look like? Is that kind of like a shares in the company? How, what does it
Yes.
look like? Okay, so it's kind of liquid, or do you have
Private companies are not that liquid, no.
Okay.
So you only get liquidity once the company is sold or if the company goes public and then you have publicly available shares. So it's a little bit different than investing in a hard asset, in a real estate asset, where you might get some rental income from that. And then you get appreciation over time if you decide to sell the business, the property at that point in time.
Right. And was there any reason that you went that route? Was that just because of your background and that's kind of what you understood that you went that route rather than maybe investing as a limited partner in a syndication or something like that?
Yes, for the time, but I am looking at opportunities to this day. And again, it's a really question of how much you want to get involved in those, because there are certain of those opportunities that certainly if you're acquiring companies or properties yourself, that requires a little bit more effort than if you become a limited partner and just provide funding to those who are already doing this.
Yeah. It's interesting.
But
With
I think one of the important pieces in terms of either looking for investment opportunities in companies that are real estate focused, or in properties, or in funds that are real estate focused, I am a strong believer in expanding your network. And I think it's worth talking about that a little bit with your audience, because some people find that, it seems like there's a lot to learn, and where do you find out how you're able to do it? I think the more people you talk to, the more people you meet who are in the real estate business, the more you can make good decisions yourself in terms of what might be interesting and what your risk tolerance is, because certain opportunities require more capital and higher risk, and other opportunities might be more palatable to certain investors.
Yeah, and it's said all the time in real estate, and it's said because it's true. Your network is your net worth, right? Because the people that you know, the friendships, the connections, the relationships that you build, that's what brings you a lot of deals. That's what brings you opportunities. That helps educate you. That helps push you forward, right? That helps drive you. That it's so important, and I'm grateful that you brought it up. Actually, that expanding of that network is essential, right? But I think a lot of people, they call themselves introverts, or they, and introvert extrovert is an interesting another topic by itself. I think you can cover that in another thing. But where do you suggest that people start? How do you start to expand your network? Because it sounds good, and I'm sure a lot of people probably would agree, but people might be scared to go out there and reach out to people,
Sure.
or create relationships, or they might be thinking, well, who am I to reach out, or blah blah blah, right? Do you have any advice on how people maybe
I have a lot of advice. I wrote a book exactly on that. And I
yeah.
do think that people create in a lot of ways their own obstacles. They feel uncomfortable in reaching out for many reasons. And the first place that I advise people to start is take a little time and think about what you need and what you want. What are your goals and objectives? And if you don't start with yourself at the beginning, you're not really going to be able to figure it out. And I almost say take 15 minutes and write down on a piece of paper, what are your goals for the next 6 to 12 months? Who are the people that you currently know who can at least have an initial conversation with you, and then use that to expand your network further. Meet with those people, talk to those people. And the single most important question you could ask of anyone is, who else would you recommend that I meet? Warm referrals are a whole lot better than cold calling people, but cold calling can be successful too. And to be honest, I do it often. I use LinkedIn. I find it to be a wonderful resource. And I reach out to people with very specific asks. I never say, let's just connect, or we'll have something in common. I go and I read an article perhaps where somebody's mentioned. I look up that individual. I refer to the article. I say, I loved what you said in this article. I would love to learn more. Would you be willing to spend 15 minutes with me? And if you have an ask like that, that's specific, that refers to an area of expertise they have or something that they've done, cold calls can also be effective. And so that's how you start to expand your network. And in real estate, you really want to talk to people who've had some experience. And there's nothing wrong, especially for people just starting out, to say, look, this is an area I'm interested in, have some proof points to how you've shown that interest, and say, would you spend a little time on Zoom? I love the fact that everybody's using this technology now. Take 15 minutes, and I would love to get the benefit of your wisdom and experience. Would you be willing to share some advice with me? And I think most of people approached in that right way are willing to spend that time, especially if there's something common. Somebody who went to the same college or university that you did, somebody who's in the same club or sports endeavor that you happen to be involved in, somebody that knows somebody that you also know. Those are the best kind of initial ways to get to people who you otherwise might not have access to. And I strongly encourage people to make it something, make networking and this reaching out something that's intentional and consistent. Because if you do, the more people you meet, the better you get at meeting people and speaking with people, and the more opportunities come your way. And it is amazing how true that is in terms of both anecdotal experience, but also the science shows that people who are second or third degree connected from you sometimes surface the most interesting opportunities because they see things that your very close network might not have access to.
That's interesting, yeah, and yeah, because it's maybe the people around you that are really close to you maybe don't, maybe they look at things the same as you, or maybe they're, you know, they have the same outlook as you, and that you need that second or third level to kind of be that differentiator. That's so interesting.
Yeah, to take you to new places. And look, real estate, a lot of it is about local and regional knowledge. So, you know, it's smarter if you first get involved to have some understanding of the location in which you're investing. It's hard to go and invest in an area that you don't know anything about because real estate is so location driven.
Yeah.
You need to know, you know, what area is good, what target customers exist in that area, what are the opportunities, both in terms of residential or commercial. And opportunities abound on both sides, but you need to have that local knowledge.
Yeah. And you said something. I really, well, you said a lot of stuff. I liked all of it, but the part about being intentional and consistent, right? It's one thing to go out and network, and that's great. Any kind of networking, I think, is good because for one, it practices that skill, right? You improve that skill of being network and getting to know people. But at the same time, it's going back to what you're saying about understanding what your goal is. What are you trying to achieve, right? And being intentional on trying to achieve that. Because if I'm trying to flip 100 homes next year, but I go to meet people that just buy and hold properties, maybe I'll meet people that flip as well on the way, but you want to find those people that are going to help you, right? And it's not being, what do you say to people that might be saying, you're saying, okay, be intentional, but part of being networking is being genuine and authentic, right? How do you be intentional? How can you be genuine and authentic, but still be intentional?
You can be genuine and authentic by your approach and by what you say. And I think anytime somebody goes into a meeting with someone and is humble enough to say, there is so much that I would like to learn and I would love to tap into some of your wisdom, I think that's being pretty genuine and authentic. And look, you know, these meetings are not necessarily meant to impress people. They're meant to be learning experiences, but they're also meant to create situations where you can be helpful to the other person. And it's not, and one of the reasons people don't reach out to others is because sometimes there's a fear that they're just asking for something and they feel like they have nothing to give. And I would strongly urge people to not worry about that to start, because everyone can help someone, perhaps not at that point in time, but at a later point in time. And I'll give you one quick example of this because it's just a story that I love. I wrote this book called Meet 100 People. I speak at events and do podcasts. A young woman came up to me once asking me for advice. And I said, of course, I'll spend time with you. Gave her advice. We had a follow-up meeting after that. 3 months later, she said, there is a call for nominations to a TEDx event, and I'd like to nominate you. And I ended up getting nominated. I did a TEDx talk, and it would never have happened if it weren't for this young woman who helped me months after I helped her. And she did get a job. You know, the advice I gave her, she said, really helped her along. I had no expectations of getting anything, and yet she gave me a beautiful gift. And I talk about it often because you never know how you can be helpful to someone, especially if you're also reading and looking out for opportunities to be helpful. So if you reach out to someone, find out what they need, what they're interested in, follow up with an email on an article or an opportunity or a conference or a gift of another introduction. And if you have that spirit of generosity in networking, you will go far.
Yeah, and I like that as well. You turned it around a little bit. We always hear about with networking that try and provide the person that you're trying to meet with some kind of values to trying to help them out as well. But I think it's important as us, if people are reaching out to us, right, you never know where that relationship's going to go, but also it's important to know that just helping that person could be amazing. You could change someone's life by giving one piece of advice or one mindset shift or something, like by proving that stuff is possible, right? And it's good to remember that both sides of that. But I think, like you said there as well, people you said it earlier, we create roadblocks for ourselves all the time mentally, right? They're more mental than real a lot of times, right? And I think we all have that goes on in our heads, but it's important to understand that there's something that we can all give to someone, regardless of what it is, right? Just take 5 minutes in understanding what's important to that person and maybe try and figure it out, right? For example, I know I have a podcast, and if someone wanted to reach out to me and they said, hey, I gave you a podcast a 5-star rating and write you a review, do you have 5 minutes to talk? Of course, you went out of your way and did that, right? Or it's just thinking a little bit outside of the box and not thinking, hey, let me just ask for advice, let me just try and take this person's time. There's always something that you can offer, and just by being genuine and authentic, like you said there, and having an interest in people, I think people appreciate that a lot as well.
I think people do. I think it totally changes the way you network if you think about it as building relationships and not just as a transactional event. And it shouldn't be. If it's just a one and done, you have to ask a person a question, that's not going to go very far. But if you truly care about what they're doing, and if you want to find ways that you can be helpful, that's how you build relationships. And frankly, that's how partnerships happen. That's how you get access to new opportunities. I mean, if you're brand new in real estate, the only way you're going to learn and figure out what you don't know is by talking to other people, reading a lot, taking that information, listening to podcasts, talking to experts. That will make a big difference. And you can't tell yourself no before you even try, because you know what, you're never going to hear the yes. You have to try. You have to be intentional.
Yeah, and then the next thing you said is the consistency, like the follow-up, right? And that can be challenging, because if you're creating different relationships, right, it can be challenging to keep consistent and keep that follow-up with people. Do you have a system or a suggestion how to do that? As your network grows, it's more people that you need to keep in touch with.
Yes. I think there are two things that have helped me a lot, and I would recommend this to anyone else. One is it's important to keep a database. So keep a list of people and put them in categories. These are people you want to talk to regularly. Perhaps you want to talk to them weekly or monthly. These are people you're going to touch base with quarterly or on a half a year basis. So there has to be some kind of tracking system. And I like to use my calendar to keep me honest. So if I say I'm going to talk to somebody quarterly, I like to mark my calendar in 3 months saying, you know what, touch base with this person or email this person. Create your own tickler system so that you remember to do it. And then also try to keep in mind, if you're reading and talking to other people, keep in mind, who can I share this article with? This is really interesting. Which of my 5 people that I want to keep in my, a more regular contact list with, can I just send to? And who can I invite to an event with me? If I'm going to look at a property, invite somebody and say, I'm looking at a property. Would you like to come and look at it with me? An easy thing to do, especially somebody who's interested in real estate might take you up on that offer. And then on an annual basis, make sure that your contacts know what you're up to. If you've made a purchase or you see something cool, let them know. I'm really interested in real estate. This is something that's been really exciting to me. I happen to like a certain area of the country a lot, and I see a lot of activity there. Share that knowledge. Introduce them to brokers that can be helpful to them, or property managers that could be helpful to them, or software related to real estate that could be helpful to them. There's so much that's going on, and it's hard to keep track of it all. And if you can help people with some pieces of that, I think that there's real value there, and you will for sure get it back in spades in terms of how they can be helpful to you.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I like that a lot. And it is important to keep these relationships going, because like you said, you never know where they're going to lead. And as we talked about, relationships are so important. Another way to create new relationship is go to, sort of in-person events, right? A meetup, a conference. Yep. Do you have any suggestions on how people can connect with people in these type of things? Because again, people feel that they may be shy, or they don't have a lot to talk about, or be scared to approach people. I hear people say that all the time. Do you have any suggestions in regards to that?
Absolutely. I do. There's one simple thing that you can ask someone, which I think is so straightforward. I like to say as simple as, tell me about yourself. If you meet somebody and they're standing there and you just say, hi, my name is, I'm at this event because, just tell me about yourself. And it's amazing what kind of doors that opens. It's very, there's some humility with which you ask that. And of course, they're going to ask you about yourself too. So be prepared to say something briefly that is relevant and that might be interesting to somebody else. But I think learning about, especially if it's a real estate related event, tell me how long you've been involved in real estate. Are you currently looking at opportunities? Who are people that you've spoken to who've been particularly helpful? There, in advance, you could put together a list of questions that you kind of have at the ready when you meet somebody so that you don't feel like, oh my goodness, I don't know what to say. But I always start with something very simple, which is tell me about yourself. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
That's a great question. And I think essentially what that question is doing as well is asking about that person, right? You want to find out about that other person. And if you have that mindset of, don't worry about talking about yourself, of course, have something to say if they ask you, but the more questions you can ask about that other person, the easier it is to build that relationship and have a genuine interest, right? Don't just ask questions, have a genuine interest and listen, right? I think listening is a skill that each and every one of us can get better at, I'm sure, and just genuinely listen to what they have to say. Again, with these in-person events, do you suggest that someone tries to meet as many people as they can, or do they try and meet one or two people and get that deeper relationship? What do you suggest in regards to that?
I think there's a real value in quality over quantity. I think if you go to an event and you've come away with two people who you're going to follow up with, you're actually going to have a coffee or another kind of conversation with, that's huge success. I think people go to the events and unless they've given out 100 cards, they think that they failed. And that is such a short-sighted way to think about it. Because you know what? You're not going to follow up with 100 people all at one time. And in many cases, people who just hand out cards don't ever follow up. And frankly, that is not success, is to hand out 100 of your cards. I think it's much smarter to have a couple of thoughtful conversations with people, and then go away with some kind of follow up to that. Look, if in advance you can determine who's going to be there and you target a couple of people who you really would like to talk to, that's actually really smart. Do some research, look them up on LinkedIn, have a little idea of what their backgrounds are. Then you come a little bit more prepared and you can find those individuals and then have some meaningful conversations that might lead to opportunities going forward. I think there's, related to this, and you may have wanted to ask me about this going forward, but there's a group of people within real estate that are so important to get to know well, and those are brokers. The broker community is there to help educate you, provide contacts, show you properties. So you have to find who the right brokers are, develop some of those relationships, and really use those opportunities to learn so that you can actually transact at the point in time it makes sense. And you have to be thoughtful about brokers' times because obviously they want to transact right away. But there are a few of them that, depending on how you approach them, that are willing to invest in you to be able to help you so that you can actually make a transaction at some point.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you for touching that because brokers are so important, especially in the multifamily space, right? Because a lot of times they're the ones that get the deals and they have the access to deals. Especially right now, everybody's talking about off-market deals. Well, how do you get an off-market deal? It's through these broker relationships, and it's so true that these relationships are critical if you want to be successful in multifamily. Especially the larger the properties are, the more they're transacted by brokers. Do you have any suggestions on how to find the good brokers and then how to build that relationship?
Yes. In terms of finding good brokers, I think it's important to talk to other people and find out other people who are more experienced that have gone down this path, what their experience has been. So it's hard to kind of figure out who a good broker is if you haven't talked to anyone. And if you don't even know what that looks like. The first and most important thing anyone needs to do is kind of to figure out what good looks like. And you're only going to figure that out if you've had conversations with people or if you've been exposed to people. So if you meet 10 brokers, guess what? You're going to figure out that one of those 10 is better than the others. And then all of a sudden you're developing some pattern recognition for what good looks like. Once you've had those experiences and if you've had those conversations and you've selected one or two people that you really think should be part of your network, then there are lots of ways to help those people. You could introduce them to others who could be clients and customers. You could provide them with knowledge and information, and you can actually do deals with them. And if you do deals, they're going to show you other deals. So, be thoughtful about how you spend the time with these brokers so that they get some benefit from the relationship as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's fantastic advice. And I think it's going back to building any relationship, right? Just think about them, right? What do they want? What is important to them? How are they seeing things, right? And these brokers, what is important to them? Like you touched on one there, close a deal with them, buy something from them, right? But at the same time, if you're trying to build that relationship to start off with, don't waste their time. Don't ask them for 10 different million things. Don't ask for a deal that you have no interest in. Don't ask them for a ton of information on something that you've never interested. Don't, call them all hours of every day and ask them for 10 million different things, right? Respect their time, right? They're busy as well. So I think, it's just thinking about that.
Their time. And if you are interested in something, look at it. And if you're not, a wonderful thing to say is, you know what, that's not for me, but I know somebody who it might be for. Oh my gosh, you're totally helping them out. And you're helping your friend out too. So trying to connect the right people at the right time is incredibly valuable. It's like giving gifts is the way I think of it. Gifts of introductions are unbelievably valuable. And both sides will be grateful to you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this topic. It's so important and it's so interesting and so fascinating, and there's so much to learn about it. And I've learned a lot just listening to you today, so I appreciate that. But I feel like we've only scratched the surface. But the good thing is, for anyone who's interested in more, there's a fantastic book out there, right? Tell everyone your book again. Where can they find it?
Sure. The book is called Meet 100 People. The Kindle version is on Amazon. Amazon also has a paperback version available, but go to my website, meet100people.com, and you can both buy the book and take a look at other materials that might be helpful.
Very cool, very cool. And just out of interest, what made you decide to write the book? What kind of brought that about? Was it just people asking you? Was it something in particular?
No, there was. I wrote the book for 3 reasons. I wrote it because it's advice I wish I had had when I was first starting out. I didn't fully appreciate the unbelievable importance of networking and building relationships when I was just out of school myself. So this is really paying forward to those who are just starting out. It's advice I've given to my 3 adult children who are beyond their first jobs in terms of how important it is for their careers. And honestly, it's advice I follow myself to this day. After I left the firm that I was with for almost 30 years, I had to create a brand new network, and I continue to meet new people all the time. And I find it not only incredible in terms of generating opportunities, I find it joyful and life affirming. And there is a lot of wonderful magic that happens in meeting new people and being able to help others, and also finding out ways that they can help you.
Yeah, and I think people would be surprised, people who are not that social and are good at building relationships yet, or haven't ventured out that, like you said, there's so much joy in meeting people, getting to know people, building those relationships, helping people out, right? If you get that joy from helping people out, and it's just great to have a network, just in terms of, I think we're social beings in general, right? I think we enjoy that socialness, and I think
right. And it can still be done today, even though we're not quite, many parts of the country ready yet to meet people in person. I actually think there are some silver linings. And I think the fact that people are much more open to having video conversations than they were a year and a half ago is a huge benefit. And I think people are a little bit more available. They're not traveling as much, they're not commuting. And so reaching out to someone and saying, can we grab a virtual coffee for 15 minutes is not such a heavy lift. And people are willing to do that. They're willing to connect even virtually. And we will absolutely go back to the day when we can meet in person and do it in groups. But you have to set the seeds and plant those seeds starting today. Don't let the pandemic hold you back from building those relationships.
Yeah, it's so true. That's definitely been a huge plus for me for all this, is I've met so many people through this that I've never met in person. But it's so strange because you talk to them and you see their face and you interact, and I feel like I've met you already, So when
I feel like that. Yeah.
I know I have people that are my friends since this pandemic, and they say, I can't wait to meet you in person. I'm like, wait, we haven't met in person. That's so strange, because you built such a great relationship over Zoom. So it's definitely a huge plus, I think, for sure.
Yep, it can be done.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this. This has been brilliant, brilliant interview. I love this stuff. It's just so interesting to me, and you've done a brilliant job of explaining all that. But as this show is called Wrestling with Real Estate, I like to incorporate some wrestling-related real estate question. And the first question is, what would your wrestling name be?
My wrestling name would be Timex, and this may date me a little bit, but Timex is a watch, and there used to be an ad for it, and they used to say it takes a licking but keeps on kicking, and it's just you just keep moving forward.
I think that's great. That's perfect for wrestling, right? You just keep moving forward. I think take a kick in. Um, uh, every wrestler has a special move. What is your special move in real estate?
My special move is I don't give up. If something interests me, I will continue to pursue it, and I'm not one to be held down. If I were wrestling, I wouldn't want to be pinned. You'd have to try really hard. So not giving up.
Brilliant, brilliant. Was there a moment that, sorry, blah, blah. I'm forgetting my questions here. What's been the biggest body slam you've taken in your career, in your real estate career?
Well, you can imagine that if you've done this for a long period of time, you feel body slams all the time. I think one body slam is worrying about what the value of a property is, even though you're not ready to sell it. So price declines, 2008, the values go down. Look, unless you're selling at that point in time, don't get scared. You have to maintain kind of a level attitude, and just sometimes wait it out. So I think that that's important for real estate is not to get too scared too soon and not to get too greedy either.
That's so true, right? Someone told me not long ago is that price only matters when you sell. So if you're not selling, what does it matter, right?
It
If
doesn't
everything,
matter.
yeah,
And it can change. And think about what's happened in the last year. There are properties in certain locations where, you know what, they've been flat for years. And then all of a sudden, like within this period of time, everything changes and properties are going for multiples of what they would have a year ago.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So was there a moment that you were standing on the top rope, getting ready to jump, but you were too scared? What was it, and how did you overcome it?
Yes, there have been several moments in my life like that, but one in particular was when I decided, or at least articulated, that I would write a book. And first it's an idea in your head, it's a germ of an idea. Then all of a sudden you say it, and I said it in front of my family. And then I said it again, but I hadn't made the effort. I hadn't jumped off. And my youngest son said, "Mom, you're just saying it. You're never going to do it." And I thought to myself, I cannot set that kind of an example. And I said to my son, I guarantee you before you graduate, and this was like a year before his graduation, I will have this book published before you graduate. And it motivated me incredibly to jump off that cliff, to get working and to get it done, because I wanted to make sure that my children saw that if I said something, that I was going to follow through.
That's awesome, yeah. Because we were saying this beforehand. It's one thing to let yourself down, right, and not do something for you. But when you let your kids down, you just can't let that happen, right? It's a different kind of motivation. So cool, cool.
It definitely motivated me.
Very cool. Well, again, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing everything. And I think for anyone, there's great value in that book. So again, please plug that book. And if anyone wants to reach out and get in touch with you, if anyone wants to find out any more about you, how can they do so, and where is all that information?
The best way is go on my website. My email is pat@meet100people.com. 100 is 100. Or look me up on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, and have an awesome rest of your day up there.
Thank you.